In fact, he's known for writing really difficult piano music. So we're going to talk about him today because he's one of the most famous composers of all time. He's called one of the three Bs: Bach, Beethoven, and Brahms. And we're going to find out why today. He was born 6 years after Beethoven died. Beethoven died in 1827, and 30,000 people went to his funeral because they loved his music so much. Brahms was born 6 years after that in Germany, and he was also a child prodigy. He was really talented musically, even when he was super young. His dad was his first teacher. His dad taught him to play the cello, the violin, and the piano, and then he got other teachers after that. And his first teacher after his dad didn't like that he was always writing music. Stop writing music, just perform. You could be such a good performer if you would stop composing. But Brahms loved composing, so he got a new teacher when he was 10. This teacher was very supportive of his composing and told him that his writing reminded him of Bach and Beethoven and Mozart. And that made Brahms really excited because he loved those composers. In fact, Brahms loved that teacher so much he dedicated his Piano Concerto No. 2 to that teacher. His name was Markson. When he was 14, Brahms had his first performance as a piano soloist in front of a big audience, and he played lots of music by Bach, Beethoven, and Mozart, and others as well. He loved Hungarian folk music. He had a friend who was a violinist from the country of Hungary, and he fell in love with the music of that country, and so he wrote some Hungarian folk songs early on when he was only like 17. And one of the songs I looked up and realized, I think you guys have heard it before. So listen and see if you've heard this before. Have you heard that? That's a fun one. He became close friends with a man named Schumann, who was also a famous composer at this time, and Schumann heard one of the piano sonatas that Brahms wrote, and it's actually the one that I played for you at the beginning, or I tried to play for you at the beginning, and Schumann loved it so much. He told Brahms, "You are amazing, you're going to be famous, you're such an amazing composer, you have great things in store for you." But that made Brahms really self-conscious, because now he felt like he had a lot of expectations to live up to, and if he didn't write perfect music, people would be disappointed. So he struggled to write music after that. Obviously he still wrote really good music, but it was hard for him. He was really good at writing counterpoint, which is when you have two melodies going on at the same time and they work together really well, but they're independent of each other. He was also really good at doing difficult rhythms. So instead of just a typical 1, 2, 3, 4, he wrote really intricate and complicated rhythms that were hard for people to play. He was also a perfectionist because of all that pressure he felt to write perfect music, that he threw away so many of his compositions that nobody even got to see them. Nobody was able to publish them because he destroyed them before we could even see them. He was engaged at one point, and the woman broke it off and decided she didn't want to marry him after all, and that broke his heart, and he decided, "I'm never going to love again." So he's kind of like Beethoven. I guess it's a composer thing. He admitted that he wasn't very good at writing catchy melodies. Like you have Beethoven, who wrote like everybody knows that. And you have other composers who write really catchy melodies that when you hear their songs you go, "Oh, I know who wrote that." But Brahms, when I say the name Brahms, you probably don't immediately think of any of his music because his melodies were not super catchy. But there is one song that I am confident all of you have heard because your moms probably sang it to you when you were little babies. And it goes like this. Have you heard that before? That's called Lullaby, and Brahms wrote that. He wrote it for a friend of his, or it's actually a woman that he was in love with, but she married somebody else. And then when she had a baby, he dedicated that song to her baby. Okay, on we go. When he was 26, he performed his first piano concerto, but the audience hated it. And he even wrote to his friend and said, "The performance was a brilliant and decisive failure." People were becoming more and more into the new romantic music of that time. They liked the new sounds that people were creating, and Brahms kind of liked the old stuff better. He wanted to compose music that sounded just like Beethoven and Bach and wasn't really new and cool. And that made him not as popular as other composers. When he was 31 years old, he wrote a song called Piano Quintet in F minor, and this happens to be my favorite of his music. So I'm going to fast forward it to the part that I really like, so bear with me. Here we go. It's right here. It's really fun to listen to. He did not write his first symphony until he was 43 years old. To put that in perspective, Mozart had already written 41 symphonies by the time he was 33 years old. But the reason Brahms waited so long to write his first symphony is because, like I said, he felt so much pressure, he didn't want to mess it up. He wrote his first symphony in honor of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, because remember, he loved Beethoven so much. He even had a statue of Beethoven in his house where he would write his music to remind him of Beethoven's music. And so this first symphony of Brahms is in the same key as Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. It's in the key of C minor. So Beethoven's Fifth Symphony goes, and Brahms' First Symphony starts in the same key and it ends in a C major, just like Beethoven did with his. So he obviously wanted it to be influenced by Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. Even though people loved Brahms' First Symphony, he still wasn't satisfied with his music. He just felt like it wasn't good enough. So he kept writing, and in his Third Symphony, it's a beautiful in F minor. It's a beautiful song in F minor, and I don't actually have it on here to show you, but if you look up Frank Sinatra, he wrote a song called Take My Love, and the melody of Frank Sinatra's Take My Love is exactly the same as Brahms' Third Symphony, so you can look that up and compare them. By now he was 45 years old, and he was recognized as one of the most major figures in the world of music. He got to be on a jury that decided which new up-and-coming young composers would get awards for their compositions, and one of the young composers that he chose was named Dvorak, and we're going to talk about Dvorak next week. All of the pictures you've seen of Brahms you've probably seen with a long beard, but he only started growing his beard when he was 45 years old. He always shaved before that. And the day that he decided to grow his beard, he wrote to his friend and said, "Next time you see me, I'm going to come with a large beard. Prepare your wife for a most awful sight." He was actually kind of a funny guy and had a really good sense of humor. He liked to pull practical jokes on people. There was a German conductor named Hans Bülow who was the first person to say that Brahms should be remembered as one of the great composers along with Bach and Beethoven. And that's why we call him one of the three Bs, Bach, Beethoven, and Brahms. He was good friends with a guy named Johann Strauss who wrote the Blue Danube Waltz. Have you heard this before? did not write that. Johann Strauss wrote that, but Brahms was so jealous that he didn't write that because he loved it so much. He said, "I would give up everything I have ever composed to have written the Blue Danube Waltz." He died when he was 63 from liver cancer, but like I said, we still remember him as one of the greatest composers who ever lived. The song you're going to listen to at home today is his Fourth Symphony. And this is a fun song to listen to. The third movement is the one you're going to hear today. And the way to remember this song is to say the words, "Come and get your beans, boys," when you hear the melody. That helps my kids and I remember it because the same way that you would say, "Come and get your beans, boys," is the rhythm of his third movement in the Fourth Symphony. So see if it sounds like that to you when you listen to it at home today. I want you to listen for a surprise instrument in this song when you listen to it at home. See if you can hear the instrument that I'm thinking of that wasn't really commonly used at this time. And if you can hear it, tell your family, and then we'll talk about it next week and see if you were right, okay? I want you guys to talk about how important do you think it is for a composer to study music from the past in order to write good music for the future? Do you think it's important that if you want to be a composer, if you want to write music, that you should learn music from the classical period and the romantic period and the Baroque period? Do you think it's important to learn folk songs from other countries? Brahms was even really good at studying Shakespeare. He loved to read Shakespeare plays, and that influenced a lot of his music as well. So talk to your family to say, if I want to write music, do I really need to study music from the past or read books or things like that? Do you think that that's important or not? Talk to your families and see what they think. All right, guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next week.